This is maximizing SiriusXM weather service on your Simrad display. We will be using primarily Simrad screenshots, but this obviously could apply to Lowrance and B&G as well. So thank you for joining us this evening. We are going to go through at least the top features of SiriusXM weather on your Simrad display. And we're going to go through features by section. So again, if you have questions as we're going through some of these slides and some of these features, please chat us, because what we're going to do is we're going to take breaks after each section. We're going to pause and address questions. And what we found is that, the more general questions that you have, the more useful it is for everybody else on the call to kind of hear, our answers to those. We are recording this session this evening. So for those of you who want to listen to this at your leisure afterwards, we will send you a link to the recording sometime in the next week. All right. So Dan Dickerson is running our slideshow this evening and co-hosting with myself this evening. We also have Sean Edmonds from the Navico or Simrad team. Thank you for joining us this evening, Sean. You there, Sean?
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate you guys inviting me.
That's great. And so for any of you that have specific Simrad related questions, Sean is your man, and Sean can chime in with any questions you guys have related to Simrad. And then I'm Geoff Leach. Dan and I, by the way, are based out of the Washington, D.C. office. We both live in Maryland. And we also have with us one of our Simrad and SiriusXM Marine pros, Andrew Snell of the Good Company fishing team. So thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Happy to be here.
And Andrew, really, for any of you that want anecdotal information, how Andrew uses weather, its usefulness, maybe even some stories, Andrew will chime in occasionally as we're going through some of these slides. But if you guys have specific questions geared to somebody who spends an awful lot of time out on the water on a regular basis, please direct your questions to Andrew as we start going through this presentation. Okay, so for those of you who are not aware what SiriusXM Marine delivers or what makes us different, this is up-to-date graphical information directly on your Simrad or your Navico displays. This is not an app, it's not cell-based, it's not internet-based. It's based off of our satellites. So SiriusXM has satellites both on the East Coast and the West Coast. And if you look at the screen on the right-hand side here of North America, roughly the blue shaded area is our coverage area. And so what we like to say is that's roughly about 150 nautical miles around the North American or United States border there. So a pretty substantial range for most people that are going offshore and need our services. So data update times, and these are just a few, and everything does tend to update at a different time, but storm radar and lightning is every 2 to 5 minutes. So there is a real slight latency. If you're looking at lightning on your screen, know that it is a couple minutes behind. Wind and wave information is updated every 20 minutes. And then sea surface temperatures, for those of you who care where the Gulf Stream is or are interested in offshore fishing, sea surface temperatures are updated every 3 hours. The data is compiled by TWC, the weather company. We have a partnership with the weather company. So they aggregate this data from NOAA and other sources, send it to us, we feed it up to the satellites, and then of course it comes down via the weather receiver to your display. All right, so let's quickly talk about how you find your service. So you first go to chart, and then you go to system.
Geoff, let me jump in here. We have a mistake in where that arrow is pointing on this page.
Okay.
We always like to recommend that you check your radio ID and make sure your unit's activated, or if you're curious about that. And to do that, you click on the settings button up here in the upper left-hand corner, and from there, then it brings you up to the system page. And if you go down to the bottom, you've got a network section and a Sirius status section. And if you go into that area there, then it will bring up this page, and it will tell you very, very easily there your subscription is active or if it's not active. And then over here, it'll give you a signal strength. 3 is the most you're ever going to have. So 2, 3, that's where you want to be. It also gives you your ESN number. That's kind of like the phone number by which we talk to the device. And it'll also tell you what service level that you're activated to. So that's the information page, and kind of a quick way to, take a look at your device and make sure that your subscription is working properly.
Yep. And if you ever need to call in, these are the kind of details you will need to have. If you have service interruptions or problems, or maybe deactivated or something along those lines, you're going to need these details. So that's why we decided to go through this right off the bat.
Yeah, and then the other thing, if it's not working, the quickest thing to do is sending a refresh signal. We have an automated system. You can just log on from like a smartphone or computer and enter in this number, and it'll broadcast to your receiver for 20 minutes and basically tell your receiver, what subscription it's supposed to have. If it's been, say, you haven't used the boat for 3 months, it may have forgotten its for subscription status, and just by going to this website and entering that number in, that will bring the weather data back onto the device. All right. So from there, going back to the chart screen, when we go in and start to look at the weather products, we select chart. That's where the weather is available. And then once you're on your chart screen, you go to the menu in the upper right corner, and you'll see that you have an overlay choice. And if you have an active subscription, then Sirius Weather will show up as an overlay. And you can select the SiriusXM Weather. And then once you've done that, just go back to the main menu there, and you can see now we have it shows the overlay weather is available, and then you have a weather options button. And you hit the weather options button, and now we have several pieces of weather information that we can go look at. The first one is view. When you select view, it gives you your choices of various weather layers. And you can see I have the precipitation turned on here, and we're looking at a rain squall over Cape Cod and a little bit heavier rain over Providence. You can tell by the change in color there, that's where the heavier precipitation is occurring. If I hit my back button, I can also animate this screen. So what I can do is I can see how the storm has been moving. If I select animate, and I can go, look at through the different time segments what the rain has been doing, and you can set that to advance manually like I'm doing here, or you can set that to an automatic mode where it just plays a continuous loop of what's been going on how the storm has been moving over the last 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. So those are your options. Now,
Also, if I can jump in, Dan, another nice thing to show here is, because we don't have the color scale here to find out what type of rain it is, just move your cursor over that spot. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, it's going to tell you based on the color return. So anytime you go over any colored area in that bottom left-hand corner, it's going to tell you. So it's telling you right now that it's in light rain, but as you move it around and you go across the yellows and red, it'll tell you that it's heavier or heaviest. So it does that based on where that cursor position is.
All right, thanks, Sean. So the next thing is the intensity of how the rain looks. And if you're zoomed in close, if you're in heavy rain, your screen could very well look like this, which is a little confusing. I'm seeing buoys, but I'm not seeing anything else other than that green coloring. So what you can do here is you can go into your menu, and down underneath of animate, there's a transparency setting. And you can go in and change the transparency of the weather layer. So you can see it's at minimum transparency right now. If I dial it up there, that's the same screenshot, just with the rain showing a little bit more transparent. So you can see the actual chart underneath of what's happening. And there's a zoomed out picture. That was, I had zoomed in right here when I took that shot. So you can see here, we've got the transparency dialed back. I can see the chart underneath. I can see the contour lines on the chart. And as Sean mentioned, you can see over here in the corner where I have the cursor setting, it's telling me that there's light rain occurring at that spot right now. So that's how you can adjust the intensity of any of the weather layers. And you can see also here, these are storm cells. We'll talk about those in a minute. Those are also dimmed down a little bit. So the screen is not looking as, so you can still see the navigational information underneath the screen. So next, we're going to go in and talk about sea surface temperature. Here, same thing. We've gone into the menu and we've select view, and precipitation is turned off right now. And I have sea surface temperature turned on, and it's showing me the color of the water is the sea surface temperature. And wherever I put the cursor down here in the bottom, it's going to tell me the temperature of the water where the cursor is. And then I have a legend over here on the side. And we can see my scale is 39 degrees to 99 degrees, and it's giving me the color palette of what this means. So at a glance, I can kind of see where the cooler temperatures are and where the warmer temperatures are. Now, for fishermen, finding a temperature break is a key piece of information. And so if we dive in a little deeper here, what the Simrad allows us to do is adjust the temperature range. So if I go in here, we can see I've got a warm and a cool SST, that's sea surface temperature setting, and right now it's 99 on the and 36. So we go in and change that by tapping on the warm or the cool section. So I've tapped on warm, and here I've hit the slider bar to move it down. So I've gone down from 99 degrees to 78 degrees, and we can see how radically the color changed on screen. And then we go adjust the cool setting. I'm going to push that up from 48 from where it was before, from 32 to 48. And now we're getting a much more defined image of where the warmer water is and where cooler spots are occurring. So getting on a temperature break can mean the difference between a good day and a bad day fishing, getting on a decent temperature break. So that's the sea temperature function. Also, if you just want basic numbers on screen, Simrad's one of the few companies that gives you the option to put that on there digitally instead, to get rid of that color and reduce the clutter on screen and just be able to see digitally where the temperatures are. Of course, as I said earlier, wherever you put the cursor, it's going to give you the temperature where you put the cursor when you click on it when you're in the color mode. All right, we'll stop here for a few questions.
Yep, and Dan, you got one, and it was during the animate section, and it was when we were talking about, an hour back, 2 hours back, 3 hours back. The question is, how many images per hour should be seen?
That tends to vary on the update rate of the device. We actually rebroadcast the image every 2.5 to, it usually runs 2.5 to 7 minutes is the update rate on the radar. But Sean, you may be able to answer that one better. It does not, when you play, say, for example, the 3-hour segment, it doesn't play every single image that came through during that time frame. It's more to give you a sense of the direction that the storm is going when you're in that animation mode.
Yeah, I believe the minimum time is every 10 minutes. So I think we'll do it 6 times an hour. Is the minimum rate that we would do.
Got it. Thank you.
The time, yeah.
A couple more questions. Does the animate include images from before you start your machine?
No, it only can store images that it's captured once it was turned on. So if you turn it on and it's only been on 15 minutes, if you put it on 1 hour animation, you're not going to get much. It's just going to flash, like Sean said, maybe 10 minutes worth. Two images to cover the last 20 minutes or so that it's been on.
Right, because it's got to store those.
Right.
Okay. And there was a good question from Ed too about SiriusXM issues with SiriusXM Weather. Who do you call? Who do you contact? Stand by. We're going to give all of you guys a contact if you have any direct issues. Not talking subscription issues, but technical issues. At the end of this webinar, we'll give you direct contact information if you have any technical concerns. So you can reach out. Okay, let's keep moving. All right, now we're going to, next in the list is waves. So we have 3 different pieces of data when it comes to waves. So we're going to start with, and this is where the cursor is, you can see the wave height at this particular location. Now we're going to talk about wave direction. So the arrow is showing you that the waves are coming out of the south-southwest, heading north-northeast. And then the third piece of information is 10 seconds. So those are 10-second intervals between waves. So from one crest of a wave to the next crest of the following wave there's 10 seconds between them, which is useful information. Now you're looking at a color palette now that's pretty kind of mild or bland, if you will. If you saw reds on this screen, you would see that that is high, really high, tall waves. So right there, you're showing blue, that indicates waves that are, Dan, I can't see that height. My bar's in the way. What is the height of that
6 footers.
That's 6 footers right there. So nice thing about what Simrad does is they allow you to adjust these wave heights. So instead of having a wave height that is currently on this screen, 20 feet max, let's adjust that again with the bar. We're going to go to 10 feet because there's no way you're going to go out in 20-foot waves, right? But if you look on your screen, you say 10 foot, man, that's about the max wave height I'm capable of handling. Now you can see it's been adjusted to 10 feet, and now look at your screen. So red represents 10 feet, and that yellow again, Dan, the yellow is what? How many feet?
6 footers.
6 footers. Got it. So it's important to note not only the height of the waves, but the direction of the waves in the period of the waves between, because your swell, obviously in period between, is pretty critical. Now let's go back and add a feature. Now we're going to throw wind on top of this. Actually, we're not going to throw it on top. We're going to talk about wind for a minute, and then we'll pair the two together and give you an example. So wind data is next, and these are wind barbs that you're looking at right here. So for instance, this one that's clicked on right here, that's wind coming out of the north-northwest at 10 knots. And you can tell 10 knots because that little tick or that barb at the end is fairly long. That represents 10 knots of wind speed. Now, if you go to this bar, you see that the wind is coming out of the west, and it's got a 10-knot bar. It also has a 5-knot bar or tick. So those two together equal 15. And then here's a third example of 2 long ticks. That's 20 knots. And of course, that's coming out of the west-southwest direction. Wind barbs can be confusing, by the way. We understand that. Now what we're doing is we're going to pair wind and wave together. So Dan, if you'll take the cursor and show us a spot, actually where the cursor is right now, wave direction and wind direction are relatively similar. What can really mess you up when you're out in the water is when wind and wave are opposing each other. Like in this particular example here, you would often see white caps or just some really disturbed, potentially tumultuous water, depending on what the wave period and wave height is, et cetera. So a useful feature for people to use and kind of predict what is going on out there before you actually get out into the ocean.
Hey, Geoff.
Yeah.
Just a comment here. So yesterday I was actually fishing out of Hatteras, and we knew some wind was coming from the south. I pulled up my wind data to look, see how far that wind had progressed north to know when we were going to go home before it got too rough out. So it's really not just the forecast, but you can use it on the water to decide, hey, that wind that is forecasted to show up at 3 is coming up the beach earlier, or hey, it's not even gotten to Moorhead yet. So we've got another extra hour or 2 hours to fish before we need to head in if you're trying to avoid getting caught in some windier conditions.
Good. Yeah, good. Good tool. And I'm glad you're using that, Andrew. And we will tell you some other tools too that are out on the actual ocean for predicting what lies ahead as well. All right. So, and then you can use the time period to look ahead as well. As Andrew mentioned, you can go 6 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, all the way up to 2 days. This is predictive information. Dan, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, sure. And then in addition to predicting, forecasting wind information, we also provide you the major weather front information. What you're looking at here are what we call surface features, which are your weather fronts, what they're doing. Smaller fronts are called troughs. That's what this line represents. And then the green lines are your isobars, so you can see where your high and your low pressure systems are. And again, this is the animation feature kicks in here as well, so you can see not only what it's doing right now, but what it's going to be doing up to 48 hours out. If you're subscribed to our offshore package, we have 2 weather packages. We'll talk about them a little bit more at the end, but I will just touch on right here when we talking about forecasting wind and pressure information. We always give you current conditions with all the packages. And then with the coastal package, we also give you information 3 hours out. And with the offshore package, we go out 48 hours on all of this forecast data. So here's the animation. You can see how we're going out, 2 days, 48 hours, as I mentioned. Another feature layer that you can turn on is cloud tops. Essentially, these are, exactly what we're talking about, clouds here. Sometimes it's helpful to look at this information. If you're out fishing, if you're looking for maybe an area where there's a little bit of shade, you can see where there's some clouds happening. Or if you're just, watching storms and keeping an eye on that. In addition to storms, another layer is echo tops, which is looks like precipitation, but what it actually is where the most severe areas of precipitation are, where there's something severe can potentially happen by looking at echo tops.
All right, I saw some chat going on already. It sounds like, Sean, you addressed those questions. So we're going to keep moving forward here.
Before we do, I have
go ahead.
one thing that should probably be brought up, and that's just because we have different color layers, we do need to take into account that we cannot do sea surface temp and wave heights at the same time. We can overlay precipitation on either one, but we cannot run wave heights and sea surface temp, the colored sea surface temp, at the same time.
Yeah, very good clarification. Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Another advantage of having that digital sea surface temperature capability, if you do want to see your temps and your wave at the same time, you can turn the wave on and then turn on the digital sea surface temperature layer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so next we're going to go in and talk about the icons. We're looking in the view section before, where we found the precipitation and the wind information. Icon gives us the following layer possibilities. Number one is city forecasts. With that turned on, you're going to get these little symbols with flags turned on with the F in them. And what they are is your local airports and places like that. That are weather forecasting facilities. You click on that little symbol and it brings up this line, and then you click on that line or tap on that line and it's going to give you the actual forecast that's being that station is reporting. So that's one of the additional ways to see what's happening in a specific area. Next is the lightning icon. So with that turned on, you're seeing lightning strikes that have occurred within the last 20 minutes. And if they're more than 20 minutes old, then these symbols disappear. So these are areas where current strikes have occurred. Here I've added the precipitation on top as well. So we're looking at lightning and precip, and you can kind of see where the storm is happening, where you've got the oranges and yellows showing up, and some lightning activity. So this is particularly helpful if you're out there and you're trying to stay out of the worst part of a storm, knowing where that strike activity is and where the heaviest part of those cells are. And there's even more information that we're going to cover in a minute that can give you even a better situational awareness. So next is observation stations. These are buoys or seaman stations along the waterways that have sensors on board that are sending weather information back to NOAA. And basically, we're able to get that information from them and give it to you. So if you click on one of these buoy symbols, then what you'll get is this information. It's going to give you the time that the sensor broadcasts the information from the from the buoy and give you information coming from that situation. And they don't all have the same sensors. So some of them will give you wind information as well as water temperature. Some of them might give you one or the other or both. It just depends on the buoy and if the sensors, are working or not. But basically, it's going to tell you, the buoy number and give you any information available about that buoy. Next, we go to the storm track information. This is your hurricane information or your tropical storm information. And just like we get from the National Weather Service, it's going to give us a forecast path, and you can click on the symbols along that path, and it's going to give you the information about, where that is projected to be at a given time. So that's your storm information. By clicking on one of those, it's going to tell you how it's moving, what direction it's moving, and the pressure, for example. So these are the next one, storm attributes. These are the symbols that I mentioned that give you even more information about a storm. So they are within a large storm, there will be individual cells, and they may not be all moving the same direction. They may not all have the same category. And so there's a couple little symbols. There's a little cloud. This one is the symbol for hail. And you can actually click on the icon itself, and it will take you to this page. Each of those cells is actually named. And then you can click on the blue line here, and it will give you even more information. It'll give you the timestamp. It'll give you the cloud top height. We talked about cloud tops a little while and echo tops a little while back. The higher the top, the more severe the cell is. And here again, critical information, you can see how fast it's moving and if there's any additional information available. Next is watch boxes. These are areas that the National Weather Service identifies that are going to be severe weather areas. With that turned on, you're going to get these red lines pop up on your screen. And for example, with this watch box, when this occurred, here's what it looked like with the weather, with the precipitation and the lightning turned on. You can see all the storm cell symbols I mentioned, and you can see how they cluster around the heavy areas of activity, and see how they're not always going the same direction. So you need to be cognizant of what these storm cells are doing within a bigger movement. Even if the precipitation animation were turned on, we might see the storm is all moving to the north, but these cells aren't necessarily tracking quite the same as the storm. So if you're trying to avoid the worst part, you would want to go in an area where there aren't any of these major cells, or where you can get around behind them and instead of in front of them. So the storm attributes are very good information to have access to.
All right, and I don't see any additional questions, so but keep them coming. If anybody has any additional questions, just let us know. Okay, now we're going to go into local weather. And here, what we show is something similar to what you would see, on an app for local areas. So you can see current weather, precipitation, hazy wind, and then you can move forward from there. So this is, several days forward in advance, you can see what's going on with weather. Marine zones is what we're going to go to next. And I know Andrew earlier was talking about, predictions and what's coming and forecasts, et cetera, important for people out there. So if you go to marine zones and go to show zones, you're going to notice these zoned areas. And these are the individual marine zones. If you click on one with your cursor and highlight it, then you go to read that highlight. It pulls up an entire report for that particular marine zone. So let's say you're heading southbound or northbound to an area that is, further beyond where you currently are. You can see exactly what's coming in that area, or you can see the forecast for your area. Many of you are familiar with, and most of us as boaters are familiar with, listening to that VHF weather report, which is about the most painful thing you can imagine when you're trying to pay attention to your zone. It cycles around. It's a really kind of garbled, monotone voice. And inherently, almost all the time, I've done this a gazillion times, I completely miss the zone I'm in. So this is just a really simplified way to see the report for your particular zone or the zone where you're going. All right, so we're going back now into tropical statements. And this is just if there is something going on out there that's a tropical, storm or weather coming your way, this will give you also a readout of exactly what is happening in much more detail. Okay, if there are any questions, keep them coming. We have a few more sections to go through here, and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay, you may or may not know that the weather receiver that Simrad produces is called the WM4. That is the most up-to-date weather receiver. And Sean, you want to take us through how to actually get the software, the most up-to-date software for the WM4 weather receiver?
Yes, so software obviously for the machine as well as the, any changes that we would do on the module itself. We need to have 20.0 or later. So we didn't have WM4 support prior to 20.0. And it is only in the NSS Evo 3, Evo 3S, and the NSO Evo 3, Evo 3S. So basically, you're going to go to our website at simrad-yachting.com. Then you'll go to that help and support. And when you do that, a new window like we have to the right, you're going to go down to manuals and software. And when you select that, it's now basically going to tell you, please select the device that you have. So you're going to select your device, and then you're just going to go there and download that software, load it onto a micro SD card, install it into the machine, and you can upload that to make it current. Right now, we're at 20.2.1 on all products. So not all the software from 20.0 to 20.2.1 is for the weather module. But in order to start it, you must have 20.0. But I always say take it to current. So if there is any little bugs or fixes for that weather module, that you've got it, and everything else is done with your system.
Sean, if you have an older system that says like 18 instead of 20 in it, do you need to go one level at a time, or will the most current one you pull off install all the updates and bring you current?
Most current will go through and install. We don't need to do any stages or steps.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Okay, so talking about equipment, the list price for the WM4 is $449. SiriusXM doesn't own these receivers. Again, they're sold through Simrad and Navico company, but we do offer a $100 rebate. So anybody who has recently bought one or is considering buying one, no reason why you wouldn't take advantage of an additional $100. So you go to SiriusXM.com/marine rebate, and you just fill out some basic information, including your proof of purchase and a few other things, and then we'll send you a $100 Visa gift card. Also, for anybody new to the service, we do have a 2-month trial of weather and entertainment that is on our mid-tier package of weather. It's called Coastal Weather. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And you find that at SiriusXM.com/marine offers. Anybody who's out there on the water knows that once you've exceeded the distance to get cell signal and or terrestrial radio, it's slim pickings as far as music goes aboard your boat, unless you have a really, really good playlist and it's all downloaded on your phone, because most of us are not using tapes or CDs or any of that stuff anymore. So SiriusXM radio is very popular with offshore boaters. And you can simply add SiriusXM radio to your weather subscription, and you pair it. You want to talk about pairing it, Sean? Some of the options here?
Sure, yes, 100%. So with our module, we have the ability to hook up, whether it's our internal Sonic Hub or any NMEA 2000 device, and actually control it from the MFD. So when we do that, you're just going to go down to the little settings gear in the window there. And when you open that up, it's going to ask you, you're going to go into advanced. It's going to ask you which receiver do you want to add to the system. And so for here, we pull the JL MM100. It would come online. And then there's another feature that's called Attach Sirius. And when you check that, that makes that aux2 input say Sirius. So now you know you're looking for the Sirius input, not just aux2. So when we're talking about hooking it up to a third-party stereo, you have to go to the auxiliary audio input. So you do need to make sure that you have a device that will accept it first off, because there is a plug with audio jack, RCA plugs coming out of the WM4, and that's what goes into your stereo. But if it is an Enemy A2000, we can actually control it, and not just the Sirius, but the complete stereo, picking AM, FM, and so forth.
And then, of course, what you're looking at here on the left-hand side of this chart screen is that control panel itself. So it shows you what's on the channel. You can go, up, down, control your volume, etc.
Yeah. Up, down is going to take you for your favorites channel, and then left, right is going to walk you through each individual channel from 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then you've got your audio controls down at the bottom, whether you just hit the X to mute it completely, or the audio symbol on the right will open up your audio bar to control it.
Great. All right. And so 4 tiers of service for Simrad or Lowrance customers. The inland tier, which is really a basic tier, mostly used for very localized weather for inshore folks. The coastal tier that comes with that 2-month trial. And it includes pretty much everything, but with the difference of offshore is that there's much more detailed sea surface temperature information on offshore that goes a lot further offshore, and forecasts go a lot further out with the offshore package. So offshore weather really is the highest tier of weather. And then there's our relatively new fish mapping service. That includes the highest tier of weather, which is offshore, and then 8 dedicated fishing features for anglers. And if anybody is a pelagic angler, an offshore angler, we recommend getting fish mapping. You can obviously upgrade to it. And we just did an entire webinar on that last week. We do have that archived, and we're going to show you exactly where that video archive is for anybody who's interested. And then I mentioned SiriusXM Radio or entertainment. And if you do add SiriusXM entertainment or radio to your already subscription, you get roughly a 30% discount. So it's roughly 30 or $5 off your subscription when you pair them together. We would be remiss if we did not mention seasonal suspend. For any of you that have your boat up on the hard, that are not using your boat for a period of time, we recommend that you don't deactivate. Deactivating can be really painful when you go to try to reactivate. So seasonally suspending is the simplest way to do it. You simply call in and you can suspend your service for up to 6 months. And in essence, what it does is that it puts your account in escrow. So it just holds whatever credit you have in your account at that given time. And then more importantly, when you call in, you say, ping my system, give it a refresh, if you will, to wake it up, and whatever date you choose within the next 6 months. So which means you don't have to call back in, you don't have to pay a reactivation fee, and you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of getting set back up. So seasonally suspending is always a good thing to do. All right, so getting activated, you first need to purchase the compatible hardware, choose your subscription package, and then call SiriusXM.com or visit SiriusXM.com/Marine Activate, or call the 855-796-9847. I suspect quite a few of you on this call this evening are already activated. Okay, and then as we head down to the end of our service here, a couple really useful resources. First of all, the Marine website, which is SiriusXM.com/Marine. We're actually showing you the fish mapping website here, the URL. But if you go to the general Marine website, it's SiriusXM.com/Marine. That'll give you a bunch of useful information about the tier packages and other information about your hardware in particular. And then I think even more importantly is a really useful tool that Dan and I have worked quite a bit on in putting together our video library. If you want really short, succinct how-to videos on each or most of the features that we offer in weather, you can find them by simply going to SiriusXM.com/Marine Library and then clicking on that Simrad Lowrance BNG tab. That way it drops you down to all the content that we've recorded. And that's how-to videos, that's webinars, and other details that you have at your leisure and at your disposal to really walk you through all those features. So SiriusXM.com/Marine Library. And then last but not least, we encourage everybody to follow us on social media, on our Facebook page and our Instagram page. All right, we have a bunch of questions here, and let me see if I can just work through some of these here. Okay. Sean, can you repeat how you chose SiriusXM from auxiliary 2? I changed out my battery last weekend and lost access to SiriusXM and just show aux 2. You want to go back to that slide, Dan, with a picture overview, and Sean, maybe you can walk through that.
Yeah, I put it in the chat as well, but yeah, so basically you just got to get on your stereo. You got to call up aux 2, so that's your source. And while that source will say aux 2 right now, then you'll go down to the gear down on the lower right-hand side there. You're going to open that up. You're going to hit advanced, and then there's going to be a button that says attach Sirius. And when you click that, that will no longer say aux 2, it will now say SiriusXM. And now you'll also notice that the window will change, and basically it diverts you from going to the stereo for the menu for aux 2 to now going to the module. So anytime you hit that SiriusXM button, it diverts you there. You do need to pay attention because some stereos have their own Sirius controller where they could add a Sirius receiver. So if you're using the stereo Sirius receiver, you've got to use the stereo controls. If you're using the WM4, aux 2 now gets changed over to our SiriusXM, and they usually are named differently, but you do need to pay attention because in the MM100, you're going to see SiriusXM, and then you're going to see XM receiver. XM receiver means you've attached a JL audio receiver for satellite to the device. But when you see SiriusXM, that means it's the WM4.
Yeah, on your stereo, if you go to SiriusXM mode and it says check tuner, that means that you don't have a separate audio tuner, and you need to be selecting the SiriusXM weather receiver as the tuner of choice. In the way Sean mentioned,
Which means you have to drive it through the chart plotter, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Right.
All right. A couple other questions in regards to our marine tiers, and this is a little confusing. It's a misnomer, really. When you say we call our packages inland and coastal and offshore, really that's not as much referring to the actual areas that make those tiers. So coastal service, really the only limitation for the coastal tier of service is that sea surface temperatures do not go out beyond 24 nautical miles. That only happens in offshore, and the forecasting does not go out as far in coastal as it does in the offshore package. So for all intents and purposes, they could be called better and best as opposed to coastal and offshore. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and then with the inland package, it cuts off completely. All weather does cut off at 20 miles offshore. So you can't use the inland if you're going offshore.
Right.
And the inland also has a limiting factor. It only shows you the weather conditions in an 80-mile radius around the boat. So you can't see the entire picture of what's happening everywhere like you can with the coastal and offshore packages. Although there is a way to go and query an area farther away to bring that an 80-mile area somewhere else up on the device. But that's the inland limitation. And then the fish mapping service includes all the weather features that you find in offshore. So that fish mapping is not an additional $99. It's not 59 plus 99. 99 includes the $59. So essentially you're paying $40 for the fish mapping features on top of the $60 you're paying for all the deluxe weather features.
Okay, and then there was one specific question about the Go 9 SXE series and the capabilities that are the capabilities limited. What's the best SiriusXM package for that model? Sean, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so the packages are the same, but you cannot use a WM4 with that. You must use the WM3. That was our previous module. The reason is the Go 9 does not have the memory. The WM3 did onboard processing. The WM4, we do the processing in the machine. So there's some differences. That's why we can't use a WM4 with the Go 9. But if you already have a weather module, you have the WM3, and then just follow the guidelines that just went over about what the differences are in the packages, because this is all the same with the WM3 as well as the WM4. The only difference is you don't get fish mapping with the WM3.
Right. Yeah, you have to have the WM4. All right, Dan, so let's go to the last slide. We want to give you a couple resources, as I mentioned earlier. if anybody has any technical questions, and I know somebody, I can't remember who that was, asked, geez, I need tech support. Do I have to call the 1-800 number? And the answer is no. Sometimes when you call the 1-800 number, it just gets confusing. So if there is specific support questions that you have about your SiriusXM module or your service or connectivity, etc., we encourage you to email marine.support@SiriusXM.com. Typically, you'll get a response within 24 hours or sooner, and then we will personally walk you through solving or resolving your problems. And then, of course, if you have Simrad hardware related questions, you can go to simrad-yachting.com/contact-us.